So first question that the people on the internet want to know, the viewers, why have you not been on the show yet?
I thought I was on the show when we announced the play-in tournament.
No, I think we were very clear that that was not WatchMock.
That was not WatchMock?
No, sorry.
Okay, then question, why have I not been invited before this?
Uh, there was a listener question in the last episode from Justin B from Los Angeles. Was that you?
Maybe.
So you watched the show.
Oh yeah, I love the show.
What's your favorite episode?
I really enjoyed, maybe it's recency bias, but I really enjoyed seeing Ben and Rahul. That was a fun trip down memory lane, and I'm excited to see the next two episodes.
What'd you think of the show? Beyond it was good.
I mean, I love the idea of the show. I mean, you pitched this to me back when you were a law student. You're like, wouldn't it be cool if I could, sit on a couch, watch mock trial, and talk to people about it? And I was like, nobody's going to watch that. And you were totally right. I know you have a great audience, and I think the show's excellent. The shows I've seen, you dig into the actual trials. People are interesting. I think that it's fun to sort of see the competitors behind the performances and to see them see their own performances. So I really like it.
Whose show's better, mine or yours?
Oh, yours for sure.
Yes, you're here to learn a thing or two today.
I'm not sure I'm capable of learning, but if I can learn, I will do my best.
All right. Well, this is called a transition in radio. I want to talk about the most recent thing that happened in your under your stewardship there at UCLA. You guys just won 2 national championships at the time of this recording last weekend. How did that feel?
It was awesome. So in law school, there's 2 big national competitions that are open to everybody. There's no AMTA in law school that sort of governs all of the events, but there's 2 competitions in the spring that every school can enter. And I think every school that is invested in trial advocacy does enter. One of them has more than 300 teams. The other has about 160 teams this year. And so those are the Texas Young Lawyers Association National Trial Competition and the American Association of Justice Student Trial Advocacy Competition. And we'd won these before, but this is the first time that they were the same weekend. So I literally got to go to one, fly the next morning to the other event, and watch my team there.
So you actually got to be physically there for both championships, even though they were happening in completely different states.
Yeah, it was great. So last year we were lucky enough to win both of them. But the first one, while I was in person, I didn't get to stay till the end. I was officiating the wedding of a former student, so I had to fly back, and I missed getting to see Regina, Enrico, Stephen, and Natalie in the finals against each other. And then the next weekend was AAJ, but it was on Zoom. I mean, Zoom mock trial is a great substitute when you can't be in person, but it's not the same. And so being in person this year for those 2 was very special.
So I think you're sort of burying the lead here, which is that not only did you win this weekend, but these are three-peats at both of these events, three-peats in terms of national championships. And at the last 2 TYLA national championship tournaments, the final round was UCLA. Is it just surreal to have that just level of dominance over the last 3 years?
Yes. I mean, it has started to sink in. It's extraordinary. I mean, these students are so good. The teams that won this year, I think a lot of your listeners or watchers will know their names. Regina Campbell, Sarah Stebbins, Sydney Gaskins. Those are obviously not just former college All-Americans, but like who's who, Mount Rushmore type, unbelievable talents. The other advocates on our teams this year are people that some of your folks will know from AMTA, but they're not as well known. And seeing them dominate at that level was really cool. Shasta Fields is an alum of UC Davis. She might be the best opener I've ever seen. And Eduoard Goguillon from Georgia Tech, he competed a few years ago, and he has gotten so good, so strong on cross, really good objections. Sophia Sharif competed at Minnesota in college. She is dynamic and graceful and getting better every day. And I got to give a shout out to Peter Jones from UMass Amherst. As Peter likes to say, you can't let him get hot because, gets out of control.
And got hot, he did, indeed.
He did get hot. So I'm really proud of them. For a lot of students, they come here with already that national success, and it's fun to see them get even better. It's a special kind of thrill to see people who've done well in college sort of reach that championship level for the first time.
Yeah, I'll sort of make a little pitch out, for the people who are watching this, because you're too humble to say this, but obviously having the level of competitors um, that you mentioned at the beginning, the Regina Campbell, Sarah Stebbins, Sydneys of the world, they've gotten a lot better, I think, during their time at UCLA. But I think the thing that's so enticing about being in a program like that is being some of the other people that you mentioned who were really good college competitors, but really took the next step at UCLA to becoming elite competitors. And I think, just watching them as someone who got to sit front row for a lot of these students go from Shasta, for example, who is an excellent excellent competitor, to watching her. I agree with you. Every time I've seen her go, she is an amazing opener. And I agree with you. I think she's the best opener I've seen too.
Yeah,
It's just really cool.
Yeah, she finished her law school career. The only round that she ever lost as a lawyer was to her own school in the national finals. I mean, just awesome. And so I'm obviously very proud of them.
We don't want to get too far into this because you promised me that you're going to come on the show and we're going to do a 6-hour deep dive into all of your teams and all the different accomplishments you've had over the better half of the last 2 decades.
I think I promised I'd come on the show. I don't know about the 6 hours, the deep dive on my teams, but yes, I would love to come on and watch some mock with you.
All right. So I want to talk about the reason you're here. You are one of the co-authors on the 2023 NCT case. Who are the other co-authors?
They are 5 of my students: Catherine Rosenfeld, Sarah Stebbins, Regina Campbell, Christian Cotter, and Will Lorenzen.
So typically the NCT case is written by folks who are on the board or one of the case committees, or typically it's some group of people who are intimately involved in AMTA. So this year it's a little bit different. How did it come to be that you and your students were the co-authors of this case?
So I think it's a confluence of 2 different things. Over the last few years, I've been asked to be on case committees or chair case committee a few times, and I've increasingly sort of moved away from that. I mean, I'm still on the board, I'm still involved in AMTA, but I just don't have as much time for college mock trial. And so I've said, no, I don't think the time is right. I mean, Toby and I did the first, or the one last time case. That felt like a really special opportunity. We wanted something for folks who'd lost their chance to finish their senior season on because of the pandemic. But apart from that, I haven't really been involved in an AMTA case for a while. At the same time, UCLA has recently approved course credits for what we call academic writing. That's usually research, but I was given dispensation to do that for case writing as long as it involved some legal issues. Obviously, all cases are going to have some legal issues. And so bottom line is I went to Jonathan Woodward about maybe a year ago and said, hey, I'd be willing to work on the next case if my students write it and I supervise. I'd like them to get course credit for doing it, and we'd be happy to write the nationals case. And he said yes.
So what is the case about for those who don't know?
So this is the first legal malpractice case in law school history, or I should say, sorry, in college mock trial history, excuse me. The case involves a wrongful conviction. The plaintiff served 10 years in prison for a crime they didn't commit, and upon their release have sued their lawyer from the first trial for negligent representation, for malpractice, saying that they were convicted because their lawyer was incompetent.
So when you're brainstorming ideas for any case, obviously there are ideas that come up that you talk through and maybe don't make sense or not for this event or whatever it is. Were there any ideas that you guys had that came close to being the idea for the case that you ultimately didn't go with?
Sort of. So when we were brainstorming, I really wanted to make sure that we had as many ideas on the table as possible before we started to evaluate them. So I think we had like 20 different ideas that were discussed at one point. We sort of voted on them and narrowed it down to, I think, 3. We submitted those to AMTA for approval. They have a group of, I shouldn't say they, we have a group of former board members or directors who are no longer coaching. So it's okay if they know the topic, and they have to approve it. They approved 2 of those 3 topics. And then when it came back to our group, I think it was unanimous that we preferred this over the alternative.
We can cut this out if you don't want us to answer the question. Will you say what the other case that was approved was about?
Other case. So I remember the one that wasn't approved. Yes, I think the one that we decided not to go with involved drugs, or I think it was drugs being found in someone's car and that person was arrested and it affected their career and reputation. Turns out that they had been planted by a professional rival who was looking to hurt them or get some sort of revenge. And so it was a malicious prosecution type case. It was based on a real life fact pattern that one of our case authors was familiar with.
So how much of the decision to choose this topic is based on the idea that this has never been done before, as far as you know, in college mock trial, this kind of legal malpractice case topic?
I think we were drawn to the novelty of it, but there's lots of things you could do for the first time that wouldn't be very fun, right? I mean, like if it was just a basic car accident case, that'd be the first time AMTA did that. But I don't think we'd want that. It's hard for that to be sexy and grab attention at a national level. I think this was fun because the stakes seemed high. We're talking about somebody who served 10 years in prison for a crime they didn't commit. So it immediately has some emotional appeal. But I like the idea, and I think the students like the idea of the meta aspect of the case. I mean, it's not hard to imagine people, opening on the plaintiff saying, they're going to get up and give an opening statement just now, and you're going to learn that's more than the defendant ever did for my client. Talking about how much time they spent on this versus what was done in the real trial. And I think those opportunities felt like an appropriate thing for a national competition where people are skilled and able to do things on the fly.
Were you concerned with a case topic like this, that because it's so meta, it may be difficult to sort of distill down to a 5-minute opening statement or a case in chief where you've got a limited amount of time to sort of explain the meta of all this with the constraints on the students? And when you're thinking about cases, sort of how do you think about that and make sure that the case that you're doing is interesting and intricate, but also able to be simplified?
I do think the hardest part about this case is probably telling a simple story for the plaintiff. We tried to make the transcript of the first trial short for that reason, so it could be easily summarized, easily explained, things like that. And that also doubles, of course, as being useful on the merits. The fact that it's so short is itself evidence of how little defense the defense lawyer put forward. But I think our students are incredible. I think the college competitors that reach nationals are incredible, and I don't really doubt that they're going to be able to do it. Even just watching nationals the last couple of years, it's striking how much better people are preparing the new case for nationals than they were when we did it for the first time back in 2015.
So as a sign that, I mean, you're already old, but as a sign that I'm getting old,
Yeah.
Some people who watch the show may not know that it's at one point in time, there was no new nationals case. And they certainly may not know that you were the sort of driving force behind the new nationals case. For those who don't know, can you sort of tell the story of how it came to be that there was going to be a new case for NCT and what was done previously and why?
Yeah. So I think, so AMTA was founded in 1985, and, for the first 30 years of its existence, of our existence, there was one case for the whole year, including through nationals. And there'd be case changes, but I think most of us who coach at that level and compete at that level look to avoid the case changes most of the time, because for one thing, if you got to nationals, you're doing something that works. So you're not inclined to change it unless you have to. And you don't necessarily want to make a case change that requires people to make changes because it may affect teams disparately, right? Like if you take a witness out, that might affect some teams more than others. I mean, it's going to affect the teams that were calling the witness more. And so case changes weren't really doing the trick of getting people to be challenged anew at nationals. It was also a problem, I thought, that at nationals, it was so easy to recycle ideas you'd heard from other teams. There was very little innovative at nationals. It was very little new. It was basically doing the same case over and over and over. And so a couple of years before that, I don't know if it was my idea or Toby Heighton's idea, or I think it was one of us who pushed for it. And we sort of, one of us convinced the other that we should do it. And then we convinced the rest of the civil case committee. We announced it for the first time at nationals in 2014 without having cleared it with everybody on the AMTA board. And so there was some controversy at the time about whether or not that was a good idea. I'm not sure that if I were advising my younger self, if I would do it the same way, but I'm really glad that we did it, and the board ultimately approved the use of a new case at nationals. And I think it's been a popular change, and I'm glad that we continue to do it, because I think that it rewards innovation. It means that the ideas people are using at nationals are more likely to be their own. It tests the ability to prepare a case in a shorter timeline. I think there's something exciting and special about having a new case at nationals. So as I look back on my time on the board, that's one of the things I'm proudest of in terms of contributing.
I'm obviously very biased, but I think you're the best case author there is. And I think if you poll recent AMTA competitors, or AMTA competitors of my generation, a lot of times, or most of the time, the cases that they're identifying as their favorite are cases that you've written or co-authored. And I think they strike a balance between being balanced in terms of results, being cutting edge, being innovative, being interesting, and being fun. When did you write your first case? How old were you?
I wrote, and first of all, thank you for the compliment. I mean, looking back, there's some cases I'm really proud of, and others I wish we'd done differently. But I mean, I'm pleased with the body of what I've done and collaborated with, because most of these cases I've gotten to work on, I've had a co-author or co-authors in many cases. The first case I did was State v. Owens. This is a criminal case. I wrote it while I was a sophomore, the end of my, not sophomore, while I was a 2L in law school, at the end of my 2L year at NYU. And it wasn't selected. I was told it was the runner-up. And then I think 4 years later, AMTA chose it as the year-long case. And I wasn't on the committee. So the committee made some tweaks to it. And it ended up being the AMTA case in 2009, 2010, I think.
I think you're right. 9-10, because 10-11 was Happy Land, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And ironically, that was, so I'm sure when I wrote it in 05 or whatever it was, I was thinking like, oh, who on my NYU team, because I was coaching the NYU team in law school. I was like, who on my NYU team could play this role or this role or this role? And funny enough, I mean, they didn't use it for that team, but it was that case that NYU won with 5 years later or 4 years later.
So you've written a ton of cases dating back to when you were a law student. What are some lessons that you've learned over the course of your time as a case author that have made your cases, I think, just better on balance?
Some things I've learned, the defense finds a way. Like I know that competitors are often frustrated. You know, why are you making it so hard on the defense, particularly in criminal cases? Because defense always scores, right? Defense speeches score better. We know from research that judges tend to give higher scores in the second half of trial as they get more exhausted, their scores are less discriminating. And so they give higher scores, and that advantages the defense because they have more scores to receive in the second half of trial. We know that it's easier to poke holes, easier to run a narrow theory on defense. And so you almost have to write the defendant as guilty. You almost have to write the defendant as liable in a civil case in order to have any shot at balance. One thing I've learned about case writing, and this is a comment I got from Anna Eldridge, who is the head coach for the Outstanding Roads program. You want some facts for cross to be obvious and others to be less obvious, so people have to work for them. You don't want too much low-hanging fruit. And over time, I've included less sort of fun background in the character witnesses, because I think most times case authors think they're really funny when they're writing the jokes, and some of the jokes are really funny, but ultimately the students are going to have more fun with the characters if you leave them sort of blank of character, let them paint the canvas. So there's other stuff. I mean, I think Toby and I wrote a 7-page how-to for case authors for AMTA a couple years ago. But so those are just a few of the headlines.
So what was it like writing a case from scratch with 6 of your students?
This was a totally different case writing experience than I had before, because I was not the primary author. In most of the cases I've worked on, I was either the primary author or one of 2 primary authors. And here I was the most hands-off of everybody for a couple of reasons. One is I wanted them to get the experience of doing it. They were enthusiastic, but also they're getting course credit. So it was appropriate, I thought, for them to be the lead authors. And so 4 of them, Catherine, Regina, Will, and Christian, drafted the primary, I think, of almost everything. And then Sarah Stebbins, who had the most case writing experience of that group, and I sort of sewed everything together, because even though we had sort of a case Bible of here are the key dates, here's what happened, inevitably, if one person's writing one thing and one person's going to write another, they're not going to completely mesh. And so Sarah and I would sort of make things match.
So I want to talk to you about one aspect of the case that's been talked about pretty regularly on impeachments and on confessions and otherwise, and that is with respect to one of the defense witnesses, the law enforcement witness. and essentially the controversy surrounds the guilty portrayal rule.
Yeah.
And I'll do my best to sort of summarize the discussion. So basically, the guilty portrayal rule says you cannot call a witness to say that they are guilty of the crime that's being alleged, or that they, in a negligence case, for example, are committed the act that caused the injury. Basically, you can't call someone and say they did it. My witness did it. In this case, there's a law enforcement witness who, for the defense, who did a shoddy investigation, as many law enforcement witnesses do in mock trial cases. And the argument in sort of short form is that that witness's statement necessarily, if that witness is put on by the defense, violates the guilty portrayal rule. So let me just pause there and ask you first, what do you think of the guilty portrayal rule generally?
I think that it's a clever concept to get at a bigger problem, and I can't take credit for it, or if you don't like it, I can't take the full blame for it. I was on a committee last year that recommended this to the board, and the board ultimately passed it. But I think it's a very elegant solution, and I don't know if the person who came up with it will want me mentioning it now, that he came up with it, since I know that people don't love it universally. I think that the challenge is, on the one hand, you want teams to be able to be creative, but you want to make sure that the creativity of one team doesn't put the other in a position where they sort of have no response. And the challenge is that if a witness wants to act guilty, there's very little a cross-examiner can do to rehabilitate their credibility, right? There's no question you can ask that will make somebody seem innocent if they are acting guilty. And this was designed to get at that idea. Now, I'm sure people could say, well, I've seen it done well, I've done it well, this person won an award doing it well, cross-examining. And the fact that elite, top-of-the-line competitors can do it, I think doesn't really address the issue, because whether the average AMTA competitor can deal with that situation effectively on cross, I think is the question. I think that it's an almost impossible challenge to overcome. And so I think the rule on its face gets at that. I'm aware that in the first year there are growing pains in terms of how it's enforced, how it's interpreted. And so I don't have a strong opinion on whether AMTA should continue to do it or whether it should be modified. But I do think that guilty portrayals as a concept sort of make it unfair for the other team. Now, you don't want to stifle creativity, and so I don't know where the line is, but that's my general thought on it.
What is your reaction to the notion that the witness, as written in this case, the law enforcement witness for the defense, potentially invites a defense team to violate the rules?
I think, with apologies to those who've been critical of it, I think it misunderstands the law in this case. So I can appreciate the frustration with a negligence case like the one we saw at regionals, where let's say you're the plaintiff and the other side says, no, it's a mechanical failure caused by, Jane Doe. She made a mistake on the plane and her mechanical failure is what caused this, not me, the defendant, right? That makes sense, because in that situation, somebody else's negligence does make it less likely that my negligence is the cause, or at minimum reduces my negligence, or the amount that my negligence caused. This is a very different type of case. It's a legal malpractice case. And so even supposing that the investigation was incompetent, and I think it was, that does not relieve the lawyer of their responsibility to do an effective defense. In fact, it makes it all the more paramount that the lawyer does a really good job of raising that as a defense. So I guess I don't really understand the frustration that whether or not you can attack Singh's investigation would somehow be a guilty portrayal, because it's not as though if Singh did a bad job, the defendant's off the hook. If I were left to my own devices, I'm not even sure that we would have a guilty portrayal rule with respect to Singh, because, like I said, I just think legally it doesn't make sense to say that Singh having done a bad job somehow relieves the defendant of liability. But I think just to steer clear of that AMTA rule, we included that there.
So I mentioned earlier that there was some discussion on the internet about this on impeachments, and I just want to get your reaction to one specific part. So we see that Just Chilling says, as an all-national attorney, you guys take this stuff way too seriously. Breathe. Adapt to the cases you're given. Sorry, AMTA made it hard. Everything will be okay. I promise. Are you just chilling?
Am I the person who wrote that?
Yeah.
No, I was never an all-national attorney.
But you agree with what Just Chilling says here.
Well, I was an all-American attorney.
Hmm.
Yeah, come on.
Got it.
Yeah, thank you.
So then Bozo Destroyer 1 says, well, guess what, Bozo? I'm an outstanding witness, actually, at the 2016 I can't even get through it. Fantastic Flyer Invitational. Sure, they forgot to put my name on the tab summary, but this stuff is serious, and I refuse to breathe even when someone tells me to. Good day. What is your response to Bozo Destroyer 1?
A couple things. First of all, amazing name. Bozo. It's not just Bozo Destroyer 1. It's Bozo Destroyer 1, 2, 3, 4, right?
Bozo Destroyer 1, 2, 3, 4. I apologize, Bozo Destroyer. Please don't destroy me.
Let's use Destroyer's full name here. It appears this is their only post, and it looks like they created their account the day of. So they created their account to make this post, which I appreciate. They were an outstanding witness, but so I'm assuming that, I was the one who, forgot to get their name on that tab summary. So a belated congratulations to Bozo Destroyer 1, 2, 3, 4 on your witness award at the 2016 Flyer invite. Very deserved.
That is a perfect transition to the next segment of the show. Guests read mean mock trial confessions about them. So we will insert the depressing music here. And we're going to read a couple. Actually, you're going to read a couple of these out loud, and then I'm going to get your reaction to them. So the music will start now.
Is there something missing from the middle of this? It's just.
There's nothing missing.
Okay. I'll read it. Confession number 11096 from November 24th, 2018. Unpopular opinion. Justin Bernstein is really bad at running TBC.
And I agree with that. I think any TBC that didn't happen before 2021 doesn't count, in my opinion. So
just like you think any Top Gun before yours doesn't count.
Well, 2015 counts. But by the way, what is that trophy up there?
This one? That's a Top Gun trophy.
Yeah. Whose is that?
Rahul's.
And the one next to it?
That's yours.
Thank you.
I don't know if you know this, but they don't make them identically every year. So yours is about an inch taller than Rahul's.
Well, didn't they do that because they wanted to make it clear that I was the best Top Gun ever?
No.
Okay, that's what I was told. But okay. Anyway, we'll restart the music now.
Okay. This is from last summer, July 17th, 2022. Confession number 29350. Justin Bernstein, I'm begging you, please stop getting involved with undergrad mock I. Okay. I don't know what undergrad mock I is, but I am not involved with undergrad mock I.
Do you have any guesses for what undergrad mock I is?
I don't.
Do you read confessions?
No. I mean, I don't mean that I've never read it, but it's been a long time. I think that it was just starting up as I was finishing coaching college mock trial. And I think it had an old name. I think it was just originally Confessions. Now but it actually updates. The only times I'll go on is if somebody sends me a message. For example, I think last week or so, Michael Gelfand sent me a screenshot of something that was on there. And so if somebody sends me something or like, you need to look at this, but no, I'm not a regular customer.
Rahul said on the show that you banned the Irvine kids from going on perjuries. Is that true?
I think I told them they better not post on perjuries. I'm sure that I discouraged them from reading it, but that would only encourage them to do it more.
That is exactly what he said.
Yeah. I mean, they were going to go on no matter what. But I told them that if I saw a post in their name, they were not going to be happy with the consequences.
Got it. Okay. So then we will restart the music one last time. Now.
Oh, this is the one that Michael Gelfand sent me.
Oh, got it.
Yeah. So this one I've seen. I've not seen the other ones, but this one I've seen. Am I reading it now?
Yeah.
All right. March 27th, 2:22 p.m. Confession number 29302. I think Justin Bernstein is just salty. He never won nationals in AMTA. So now he's trying to turn AMTA into the activity he can actually win at, law school mock trial. That's why the case sucks. Like, yeah, that's why the case sucks, and why he keeps trying to turn the invention rules into law school rules when nobody,
Redacted.
I think I can guess what it said, when nobody wants that.
Are you salty you never won nationals in AMTA?
My team did win nationals in AMTA.
Ooh, so confession 29302 is wrong.
Well, yeah.
What year did you win? For those who don't know,
Is the NYU year.
that was 2010.
Yeah.
And you were the coach of that team when you were a law student.
No, so I coached them as a law student, and then when I moved back to California, I continued working with them through 2011 across the country. I worked with their then student leaders, Amanda Tuminelli, Patrick Diamond, Cindy Giordano, and Justin Matarisi, who was a former student of mine who'd taken over, and he deserves even more of the credit for their results. I mean, he was tremendous.
So this post mentions the invention of fact rule. And so the last thing I want to talk to you about in terms of large topics is the controversy surrounding the invention rule. And just again, to give some context for what we're talking about here, last summer, you proposed a rule change, which would change the invention of fact rule to necessary inference, meaning the competitors are limited to evidence in the case file or evidence that is a necessary inference from the materials that are explicit in the case file. That proposal ultimately was not approved. I think it was withdrawn before it actually was voted on. So before we get into sort of the outcome of how that played out, what was the thinking behind that rule change proposal?
So I guess I should back up. It'd been about 2 years in the making that AMTA's presidents, I think it was under Brandon Harper's term, were interested in having a group look at how we deal with inventions. Obviously, there have been some sanctions in the last few years that were significant. There was a sense that there was more invention happening than the board was comfortable with. And so they put together a committee of current directors, current coaches, some current competitors at the time, to sort of re-examine everything we do from when it comes to invention of fact. I chaired that committee. And so I think we probably had 15 different proposals. We narrowed it down to 8 or 9 that we actually submitted to the board. And the one that I think drew the most attention by far was what people are calling the necessary inference rule. It looked like you were going to ask me a question.
No, I was just enjoying.
Oh, you're just riveted. Okay.
Yeah.
So I guess one thing I'd say about the invention rule is, in some ways, the titles reasonable inference and necessary inference are a little bit of a misnomer, because our current rule, I know it uses that phrase reasonable inference at one point in our rule book. That's not really what the rule is, though. What it says when you read the definition is that it's not what can be reasonably inferred, it's what a reasonable person would draw as an inference from certain facts, which is probably north of a reasonable inference, but south of a necessary inference. And I think that regardless of what our policy is, I think that our committee felt like we needed a clearer rule, a better defined rule. But in terms of the idea of making it stricter, that came from the board as a whole. We did a survey. People will recall perhaps that we did a survey of AMTA competitors and coaches about what they thought the invention rules should be and whether they thought certain situations were proper, improper, invention, non-invention, should be an invention, et cetera. At the same time, we did the identical survey for the AMTA board. And we found overwhelmingly that, well, not unanimously, but overwhelmingly, that the board as a whole thought that we should have a narrower inference rule. And the one that matched most what the board members seemed to want was what we generally call a necessary inference rule, something that's got to be true based on the facts of the case. And so that's what we presented to the board. When we got to the board meeting last summer, I think that a lot of students and coaches had written in saying that they didn't want it. I think that forced a lot of us to rethink whether the language that was being proposed was right. And I suggested to our committee that we withdraw it. Even if the concept might be okay, the language was not ideal. And even if we thought it was an improvement, and I don't know, you don't want to create a rule that then needs to immediately be revised. And so I don't anticipate that being revived this year. I think that the CIC has done a really good job of demonstrating how narrow AMTA's rules as written are, but that's sort of the history of it.
So I had Dan Stern on the show a while back, and we had a pretty good discussion about this. And he basically, in sum and substance, said, I sort of think that we should keep the rule as sort of as loose as it's ever been. And because that's part of what college mock trial is, being creative with the facts and for lack of a better description, allowing for inventions to some degree because it's fun. What do you say to that?
I'd say I mostly agree. I mean, I think invention is really fun. And I mean, I haven't coached in college for a while, but I think anybody who saw my Irvine NYU teams would say that, we had some fun with the facts. I think the question is where you draw the line, because I don't think anybody thinks there should be no line, right? It can't just be, well, we brought our own affidavit. Because then you can't effectively do a cross-examination. You can't effectively have constraints. And so in terms of where you draw the line, I don't have a strong opinion. I do think that while things are fun, if the line is really loose, in terms of developing some of the critical thinking skills that I think our board wants to promote, I think that the line that would urge a narrower definition. I guess I would say, my personal opinion, necessary inference is probably too strict for law school. The reasonable inference standard, as it's been enforced, say, over the last 15 years, is probably too loose, because I think most people will define a reasonable inference as something that could reasonably be true, not would reasonably be true. But I guess I kind of like the rule that we actually have now that it's being enforced.
So is it true that you actually do want to turn this into law school mock trial like the confession said?
No. If anything, I think that law school mock trial should change more to become more like college mock trial. I think that college mock trial is better run. I think there's more community. I think the rules are better delineated. I've gotten a lot of grief in the law school circuit for trying to adapt some of our law school rules. You're smiling, I think, because you've seen that.
I just think it's funny that the college people are like, you just want to be more like law school, and the law school people are like, you want to be more like college.
Right. I think that in most ways, college mock trial is the superior activity. But I also just think they're different, right? In law school, we're trying to train trial lawyers. In law school, we certainly want to provide opportunities for trial training, but a lot of our students are not going to be trial lawyers. A lot of our students aren't going to be lawyers. A lot of our students have no desire to go to law school. And so I think it's important that the competition is not just driven by realism. It's not just driven by legal training. I mean, there's a reason why our witnesses are scored. There's a reason why our witnesses get a score on direct and a score on cross. I know there's been people in the past who said, oh, we should get rid of one witness score, or we should, ban accents or costuming, or, some of the things that are done at the law school level or at some high school competitions. I love that stuff. And so I don't think we want to lose that. But I do think that just because I think that there are aspects of law school competition that are worthwhile, but I don't think that we want our college mock trial to look like law school mock trial.
A couple of quick hitters before I let you go. You said earlier that you've been writing cases since you were a law student, but you and I have didn't really write a case together until 2020, the Carol Baskin Tiger King combat case, right? Did we co-author anything before that? No, right?
I don't think so. I think that was the first one we worked on together.
Did you find it difficult to write cases before you had my help?
Yeah. I remember waiting and thinking I wish you'd been born, so that way we could write a case together. But I was just waiting for you. But honestly, that period of struggle has just made me appreciate more my time getting to learn from you.
You're welcome. What is your favorite case that you've ever written? Or
hold on, we've got Edward, come on in. We got Edward. This is Eduoard Goguillon. Edward, we're being recorded for Phil Costello.
Edward, what's up? Welcome to WatchMock. You're on the show.
Thanks.
Eduoard gave the closing argument this past weekend at the AAJ National Championship as co-counsel with Sidney Gaskins, and you can see he's getting ready for the luncheon.
No, we have a scrimmage for this weekend right now. So
didn't know about that.
Some director.
Yeah.
Well, congratulations. Was it an awesome weekend?
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. Had a blast. It was fun competing with Some people I had competed with before, some people I hadn't, and then just a fun weekend in NOLA all around. So
What did it feel like waiting for the announcement in the championship trial? Were you guys pretty nervous?
yeah, I would say I was a little bit nervous. It's I grew up playing sports my whole life, so like pre-trial, I get kind of the same pre-game jitters as I did for like soccer, but it's different waiting for results after a mock trial round because there's no scoreboard. Like so it's a little bit more nerve-wracking in that sense.
So this is your first national championship as a mock trial competitor ever, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's gotta be amazing. Like college competitors dream of winning a national championship. It's like almost seems like unattainable. And does it just feel like amazing that you are a national champion? You've won the big tournament. And how does that feel? It's got to be amazing, right?
Yeah, no, it feels pretty good. Definitely something to check off the list of things to do in law school. So feels good.
Yeah, we had to do a lot of work with Edward. So he was coached by Will Warahe in college. So he's a 2L. It took us about a year and a half into law school to get rid of the Georgia Tech bad habits. But
right,
once we got rid of that Warahe training, he was ready to go.
You've won 3 national championships 4 with Will Warahe students. I mean, that is a true testament to your coaching acumen.
That's so Chandler Matz, Sarah Stebbins twice, and Edward. Yeah,
right.
The Georgia Tech students are awesome.
Yeah. Better one tournament we won with 2 attorneys both being from Georgia Tech.
Edward, before I let you go and wrap up with Justin here, I've got a request. If you can get a video of Justin kicking a soccer ball, I will Venmo you several $100. If you can do that.
So I'm so in. All right, that's all I'm doing for the next year and a half. Got it.
Yeah, we'll make that happen. I'll shoot you a message.
Okay, sounds good.
Awesome.
I'll see you later.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt. I was just grabbing stuff.
Yeah, so my office often doubles as a supply closet during the year.
That's cool. This is great. This is great radio.
Yeah, he's getting his exhibit box. Is that offer of hundreds of dollars for me kicking a soccer ball? Is that offer available to me too?
No, sorry.
Yeah.
No guilty portrayals.
Understood.
What's your favorite case you've ever written?
I'm probably partial to Ginger v. Heisman because it was the first college nationals case, and I knew how much was at stake. It was really important to me that the new nationals case concept survive, and I knew that if that case came out imbalanced, it would sort of be a referendum on whether or not this was doable. So I felt a lot of pressure to make sure it came out balanced. It was, I think, even closer than 51-49, and I like the topic. It was election fraud. I think that's an important social issue. So that's probably the one that's closest to my heart, but I'm proud of a bunch of them.
What do you think is the best mock trial case ever written by you or anyone?
So I'll sort of exclude anything that I worked on. I'm too biased. My favorite was my first case that I got to do as a competitor. That's the Gilbertson versus Everest experience. Somebody dies on Mount Everest. I think it's a good example of how people tend to mythologize their first case, because I've gone back and looked at it and I'm like, this would not work today. It's just not nearly complex enough. There's too many holes. It's too exploitable. But at the time, I just loved it. And I fell in love with mock trial as a sophomore in college doing that case. So I'll pick the 2015 or 16. I'll go with the 2016 Top Gun case. Even though I didn't love the result that year, me and Rahul lost to Ben and Ryan in the finals that year. Top Gun. I just think that was a great case. I think Top Gun does a really great job with their cases.
So not any of the Battle of the Experts cases. Got it.
Correct.
No,
Those, you mean the ones you wrote?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I considered those.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Good luck getting an invitation this year. So the last thing that I do before I let guests go, depending on the time of the year, but certainly this time of year, is number one, we've got NCT coming up at the time of this recording in less than 2 weeks. Who's going to be in the finals and who's going to win? And since you're a viewer of the show, you know the rules. You may only say the names of 2 schools when you predict the final round, and you may only say the name of 1 school when you predict the winner. Time's yours.
I've heard from your show that UCLA is really good. but actually, I've not seen UCLA beat. I've only gotten to see a few trials this year, and so I feel like I should have a foundation, personal knowledge of any school that I pick. Although I'm watching a UCLA internal scrimmage tonight, so I'll get to see UCLA A and B for the first time this evening. But of the schools that I've seen, the best team is Chicago. I was blown away at UClassic by the quality of their whole team, but especially the lawyers. That's as deep a council table as I can recall. And I obviously haven't seen others, but it would not be shocking to see them win it all when they got so close last year.
Last question before we let you go. We ask everyone who comes on the show who they would say the greatest competitor of all time is. And as someone who has been around this activity for 2 decades, who better to ask than you? Who is the greatest competitor of all time? Same rules apply. One name.
At their peak, no one was better than Corellis Bryant. Corellis came to college without having done mock trial, and as a first-year competitor at NYU, was a double-sided All-American. I think he had perfect ranks on one side and only missed 2 ranks on the other. And he didn't close. He didn't cross the key witnesses. He did the sort of do nothing, direct, and cross. And he was next to people who also won All-Americans. He outranked them, and he only got better from there. And so I would say Corellis is the most talented competitor I've ever seen. If he was on and around, there's just nothing you could do.
And for those who've never seen Corellis or don't know who he was the guy who played the grieving father in the 2011 final. And I think he's an advocate in the 2010 AMTA round that is for sale on the website because the footage was lost that year. So I think he's the opener in that round. And I agree based on what I've seen. He's fantastic.
Yeah, his charisma, he's really smart. He's really adaptive. He's comfortable in his own skin, but his level of charisma is just unmatched. And I'm limiting it to college mock trial, so I'm not making any comments about my law students. So if they're listening, that's not what I'm saying. But in terms of the best college competitor I've ever seen, I'll go Corellis.
Well, thanks for coming on the show. And it sounds like you have agreed to come on the show at some point in the future we'll figure out what we're going to do. Maybe we'll watch an opening ceremony from years past and we'll critique it from combat.
Right? That's the whole idea, to watch mock.
We're going to watch mock. Yeah, exactly. Great. You know the title of my show.
Yeah. I know the title. I know the music. I'm pumped.
I'm joined today by one of the competitors that's going to be competing in just a few days down in Memphis, Tennessee at Nationals. Why don't you introduce yourself to the people who may not already know you?
For sure. Hey, everyone. I'm Josiah. I'm a third year at UC Irvine, and like Phil just mentioned, we're headed to Nationals.
It's crazy like that I saw you compete virtually, obviously, as a high schooler, and now you're a junior in college. Time flies, right?
Did you see that? That's okay. It absolutely does. I mean, Gladiator seems like a million years ago, but it's like third year in college now, and kind of like looking at the next chapter almost, prepping for LSAT and all that good stuff. So yeah, it's been a minute.
So you are a junior. You still got one more year of eligibility. Are you starting to feel the nerves of the impending graduation?
Yeah, it's a little stressful, to be honest. I mean, everyone's kind of in the same boat who's like interested in the law school track. So definitely looking at LSAT, definitely looking at that GPA, getting everything organized together for those law school applications, and getting ready to exit this chapter. It's kind of scary, but it's all exciting.
Well, you still have a lot of time left, and you still have some time left in this season. Congratulations on Irvine's bid to Nationals.
Thank you so much. I mean, we're so excited.
3 straight years at NCT, all 3 years with you in the program. Have they given you your just due over there for getting this team to Nationals all 3 years?
It's a lot of different players. I have been lucky enough to bet on the RA team for the past 3 years, all of which we have qualified. So I think it's I mean, yeah, I think it's cool that I've been there for all of them, but I've had some wonderful seniors, and then now kind of taking a little bit more of a leadership role on that team. I think it's a little bit different, but we're happy with all 3 of those just kind of growing our program and making sure we're knocking on the door a little bit, trying to enter into the conversation with some of the bigger names.
So you guys were in the rare position of being 6-0, pretty much guaranteed to go to nationals before round 4 even started. That must have felt pretty good, right?
It certainly did. We were a little we weren't going into round 4 that way though, just because weirder things have happened. And like we saw this year, crazy teams that got 6 didn't actually get out. So we were kind of not operating under that mindset, but it did feel good to go into round 4 having not dropped the ballot. So it was cool.
Yeah, and even your B team was 4-2 with a shot to get out, and lost a close round 4 to Berkeley A. That must have been tough for them, but still a really good result for your B team being 4-2 heading into round 4.
I mean, yeah, we're so proud of them. They absolutely killed. We field a really good B team every single year, and this year we were lucky to have some seniors on that team, so it was very well led, and they did exactly as well as we were hoping, and they had like you said, a tough round 4 against a really good Berkeley team.
So I want the people who don't know your program that well to get to know it a little bit better. How many teams does Irvine field on any given year?
4. Yeah, we have 4 teams spread across, and then we stack those teams.
So is there one head coach for the entire program, or is it separate coaches per team? How does your coaching staff work?
So we have one really, really stable coach, which is Emily, and then the coaching staff, like you put it, is kind of different every single year. Different alumni comes back every different year. But they're not really focused on one particular team. Kind of just if a coach is there, they're there for all 4 teams, and we kind of all have access to them. So I'd say one real head coach, and then sometimes we have other coaches pitching in for success of everyone.
I'll do my best direct examination here. You mentioned someone named Emily. Who's Emily?
My goodness, the amazing Emily Shaw. She's our wonderful head coach. One of the best mock trial brains out there, in my opinion, and just a wonderful human being. She is leading the charge and huge reason for that orgs finish. And we're going to keep depending on her as we move through nationals.
So one of the things that I think has been an interesting recurring topic on the show are the responsibilities of the coaches for various programs. What does Emily do for Irvine?
Quite a lot. But I think it's different than a lot of different head coach models because starting with the stacking process, it's we have what's called an intel committee, and that's 5 different people along with Emily who stack our team. So she gives advice as to who we should stack, but that's a collective decision. And then just for theory talks and everything like that, as we're deciding our 4 fall theories, she gives input on that. And then everything past that is usually script deadlines and different things like that. And then the major things that she does is running our tournaments. We have 2 tournaments that we host, one in the fall and then one in the winter. She is everything. She makes those tournaments go. And that's kind of the biggest thing aside from competitive help in our program that she does for us.
So will she help you guys with content?
Oh, absolutely. Pretty much take anything to Emily and she has good things to say about it. Constructive feedback anytime.
I would imagine that's a pretty big weapon for you guys on short prep going to nationals.
You are absolutely right. It's been immeasurable because Emily competed herself and she knows the Nats turnaround. So we're getting a huge amounts of feedback on content that we're prepping every single day. So it's an invaluable weapon that we have that she's in our program there for pretty much every single practice that we have in this little 3-week turnaround just to give her input.
So I want to talk to you now about NCT. You guys 7-1 at Orcs earned that bid. How have you guys enjoyed the case so far?
It's been fun. But it's also been a little bit frustrating, I think, because it's a good case and it's a little bit tough to crack, I think. So it's been fun to write, but also there's different problems at every turn. With a case you have for 8 months, you kind of get the time to figure all of that stuff out. But this quick turnaround period, it presents those problems a whole lot faster. But I think collectively as a team, we have a lot of fun doing it together, and we're fielding all the difficulties and doing everything together. So it's fun and frustrating all at the same time.
So you guys competed in the bedbug case, or you competed in the bedbug case, in the lab drug case, and now this one. Which do you think was the best?
I gotta go with Riggs. Riggs had a soft spot in my heart. That was a really fun case. I think the premise was just really interesting to me. And this one is interesting as well, but I think if I was gonna rank them, I would go this one, or sorry, I would go Riggs, and then this one, Attorney Malpractice, and then Bedbugs last. Honestly, the Bedbugs just kind of creep me out.
Yes, I was a co-author on Riggs, and Justin Bernstein's the one of the co-authors on this one. So what you're saying is, I'm a better case author than him. That's what I heard.
Hey, I didn't say all that. I'm sure everyone has collab. No opinion on that one.
To say I was a co-author on the Riggs case is a enormous overstatement. I think I crafted one exhibit and gave some feedback on some others, but I'm glad to hear that you're enjoying this one. I want to talk to you now about the actual tournament itself. How's prep going for you guys?
Man, it's difficult. It is time consuming, and it's everything you would expect. I mean, for trying to write a condensed case that's clean and everything in 3 weeks, it is a monster of a challenge. But I'm thankful that we have a lot of people who were at last year's NCT alongside Emily. We actually have 4 people who we took to NCT last year. So this group has the experience of doing it in 3 weeks. So that's helping us a lot in terms of avoiding some of the problems that are like first time NCT qualifiers may face. I think so. It's hard, but that experience has definitely helped us a lot. And it's getting us ready for those scrimmages that we're planning a lot faster.
Other than you, who are the other 3 returners from last year's NCT team?
Yeah, so Dylan Darwish, a double-sided witness on our team. Varsh, who's our president, she middled at NCT last year, and then Anthony, who was our defense opener this year, he witnessed at NCT for us last year.
Are any of those 3 competitors that you just mentioned, were they also on the NCT 21 team or just you?
No, just me.
So you were the old veteran of this team.
I guess you could call me that if you want to call me old, but yeah, to be honest, that was a while back.
Well, you know how this show goes. We like to make predictions and we like to be controversial. So I want to turn to the prediction segment. Before we get to who you think the division winners are going to be, I just want to kind of look at the divisions as a whole. We've got the Pullman division and the Birch Porter and Johnson division. It's a lot of names to say. Which division do you think is better?
Okay, I'm gonna be a little biased because I'm in this division, but I think Birch Porter and Johnson just has some extremely hard hitters and some really big powerhouses that, frankly, if I see them, I'm gonna be a little worried. So that's my division that I think is a little bit better.
Yeah, I mean, obviously Irvine, but even Irvine aside, you've got Patrick Henry, Harvard, and Tufts. I mean, some people would say those are the 3 best teams in the country. So I think that's really tough. But then you look at the other side. I'm a big UVA fan. Notre Dame's had a hell of a year. UCLA, the Chicago A, the runners up from last year. NYU, lots of really good schools there. UC Santa Barbara, never count your counterparts in California out. This is going to be a really competitive NCT, right?
Oh, I'm sure. I can't wait to see how the other division shakes out, just because I really think that there's going to be some big fights to get into the final round in the other division. I honestly, I don't know who I pick. I'm sure you're going to put me on the spot a little bit.
Well, you're going to have to know in a second. I want you to make your division picks for both division, and I'm going to ban you from picking Irvine because we know that you think that Irvine is going to win, and certainly Irvine's got as good of a chance as anyone at this event. But I'm going to ban you from picking your own school. Let's start with the Pullman division. Who's going to win that division?
That is such a good question. Oh man, hard to bet against the returning national finalists, but I think that I've seen UCLA A this year, and I think they could make a really good run. My money's a bit on them to make the final.
That's as good of a bet as any. UCLA with the experience, with certainly the talent. I think UCLA is certainly a candidate. Chicago, I think, as I said a second ago, is certainly a candidate. NYU, absolutely. I think I said 2 episodes ago that I think Cincinnati's a sneaky underrated team that I think can do well.
Yeah.
You never can count out Rhodes. There's a lot of really good teams in this division. But I think UCLA is a good pick. Let's go to the non-Pullman division because I'm not saying all those words again. Who's going to win the other division?
You know, gonna go maybe a little radical, but not really. Um, Again, betting against the people who literally won it last year. But I think that 8-0 at Orcs from Yale is really, really telling, and I'm gonna make a Yale pick.
Betting against Yale is never a good decision considering how often they've won their division. That is certainly a good pick. Patrick Henry's just been so good and been knocking on the door. Same with Tufts. There's a lot of teams in this division who've been really, really close. Obviously, Yale has been there. I think that's as good of a pick as any in this division too. Yale versus UCLA in the final. Who wins?
Ooh, I really think that sides would tell a lot in that story. I think I think I'm going Yale.
Wow. Okay. I'm going to put you on the spot one more time here, and I want you to tell me who the sort of dark horse of this tournament is. A team that nobody is talking about that you think can make some noise. I think I've said a couple times. I think my team would be Cincy. Who's yours?
Okay. Oh, that is a really hard one. Okay, I gotta take another look. Okay, so since I heard Benedemski pick UCLA B, I would say them because I've seen them a lot this year, but they're not really not being talked about right now. So I think for my sleeper pick that I don't think a lot of people are talking about is Santa Barbara. I've seen them a lot this year. I think Maddie and Elena are two of the best to ever do it, and I wouldn't be shocked at all to see them pull it together.
Can you really call them a sleeper pick, though? I kind of think a couple of years ago, you would have been right. But now I think they're kind of on the main stage and sort of with the heavyweights of the AMTA circuit. I mean, I think that's certainly a good pick. But I would push back on calling them a sleeper. I think they are one of the titans of the AMTA circuit these days. I want to ask you about the UCLA B thing because you are someone from California who would know this. And Bennett was not the only person that I've spoken to since the Orcs results who had nice things to say about UCLA B. What is it about that team? I mean, I think it's obviously unusual to hear a lot of sort of high praise for someone's B team, right? Where their A team is at the event. What is it about UCLA B that people are overlooking? And maybe it's not people, maybe it's just me. What do you think it is about that team that makes them a formidable team at this event?
I mean, there's so many things you could talk about. We've hit them 3 different times this season. And I think that something that's really putting them in the conversation is, I'll say, content writing and just performance. I really think it's hard to separate against a UCLA team in general because especially on the West Coast where we're all like very much performance oriented and like different things like that. So they're going to fill up the space. They're going to be loud. They're going to vary their tone and all those good things. So I think it's hard to separate against teams that know how to do that and do that well. But I also think they perform the content that they have very, very well. And it's kind of different than a lot of teams you would see, and a lot of different approaches are taken. So there's a little bit of a shock factor too, I think, when you're hitting someone like them. So all those things put together, I think, makes them a really, really formidable opponent all the time.
Well, thanks so much for coming on. Good luck with the rest of your prep, and I'm hoping to see you hoist some hardware down in Memphis.
Me too. Thank you so much for having me, Phil. Good to see you.
I will not give my life for Joffrey's murder, and I know I'll get no justice here, so I will let the gods decide my fate. I demand a trial by combat.
I'm joined today by the first competitor selected for Trial by Combat 2023's play-in tournament. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yeah, so I'm Annalyn St. Ledger. I go to American University. I've been competing with them for 4 years, and I'll be graduating this May.
Annalyn, this is really exciting, not only for you, but for me. This is the first competitor. You are the first competitor that we are selecting for this new tournament. I'm really excited. Are you excited?
I'm beyond thrilled. It's such an exciting opportunity for schools, and I'm really honored to be representing American University at the competition.
So we're going to talk more about the play-in in just a second, but before we do, I want to talk a little bit about the season. American was, I think, one of the sort of consensus picks going into Orcs for contender at Nationals. How devastating was it for you guys to not make Nationals?
You know, obviously being a senior, pretty devastating. It was very upsetting. You know, there were a lot of very close, heartbreaking rounds where, you know, ballots were super, super close. And if they'd gone a different way, we would have had a different result. But ultimately, that's the nature of the activity. It's very subjective. It can go any which way. I'm very proud of the work that my team put in, and I'm very excited to see what the program continues to do in the future.
Yeah, I was fortunate enough to get to watch your team at Drexel's Invitational in round 4, and I was super impressed. I don't think I got to see you in that round, though, right?
No, that was our defense side going up against Pitt at the Drexel Invitational. So no, I wasn't in that round. But, you know, to talk about team strength, in that round, I think there were 3 freshmen, if I'm remembering correctly. So, you know, they've got a lot more years to continue to somehow keep getting better.
As many who watch the show know, I'm a big fan of one of those freshmen. So I of course agree with your take on that. I want to talk to you a little bit about combat. You got the call earlier this week. We're recording this a few days before Nationals. You got the call earlier this week that you'd been selected for the play-in tournament. How did you feel when you got the call?
I was completely shocked, very excited. I called my mom. She doesn't quite understand the world of mock trial because she's very disconnected from it, but I wanted to let her know. It was very, very exciting. It's
always funny, like sharing like stuff about mock trial with parents who are non-lawyers. My mom is not a lawyer, but I kind of am confident that my mom could coach a team out of regionals if she needed to, because just the amount of mock trial she's heard about from me over the last, 2 decades. That's really cool, though. What was your mom's reaction?
My mom was super excited. She had a lot of follow-up questions, like about the timing of everything. My mother's a very logistical person. So she was like, when is this? How are you preparing? Like, what's going on? But she was very excited. And she told me to make sure I called my grandfather too. Again, somebody who does not understand mock trial in the slightest, but who are very excited for me, which is great.
So did you sort of have that weekend blocked off just in case you were selected for it?
Yeah, so funny story, I'm actually a tour guide in downtown DC right now for my job. So I get to choose what tours I pick up. And I, wasn't picking up any tours that weekend just in case.
Oh, what do you give tours of?
Smithsonian's, monuments, memorials, anything downtown.
Nice. You're sort of like a DC expert then.
That's what I hope the people who take my tours think.
What is like the most fun, like little tidbit that you give on tours?
Ooh, I love talking about the statue of George Washington that's in the American History Museum at the Smithsonian. It was supposed to be in the Capitol, and it's so ugly. And I love having people talk about how ugly it is.
Oh man, now we're gonna insert a photo of that here so people can see what you're talking about.
Yeah, it's like him shirtless in like a Roman style toga. It's so weird.
Do you say that on the tour that it was too ugly to put in the Capitol?
Yeah, I mean, it's too ugly. And plus there's like a whole bunch of things, like actual historical stuff about George Washington didn't want to be buried at the Capitol and everything. But it is so ugly, and it's just like big and shirtless, and you don't ever see George Washington shirtless. And it bounced around museums and places for a really long time because nobody wanted it. And now it's at the Smithsonian. So
we are about 3 weeks away from the play-in. Have you decided who your coach and second chair are going to be?
I'm decided on my coach. My coach will be Amanda Mundell, who's one of our wonderful coaches for the program at large. And I will not yet say who my second chair is going to be, but I have a first pick for sure.
Ooh, exciting. I was hoping you'd break news, but breaking news with Amanda. That's amazing. Obviously, Amanda is a fantastic coach, friend of the show. That's really exciting. So do you guys have any plans for what you're going to do over the next couple of weeks to prep?
So I'm definitely going to be relying on my team as much as possible. Like I feel very grateful to be surrounded by, the team members and the coaches that I have. I'm going to be working a lot with my close friend and roommate, Nora Sullivan, who is a great mocker and who I absolutely love doing this with. And then I'm hoping to do a couple of scrimmages if the timing works out. Obviously, it's a bit of a short turnaround, especially with a lot of people coming off of nationals this weekend. They'll be exhausted, but if it works out, I love to do it, be as prepped as possible.
So it was kind of cool when I watched you guys at Drexel. I knew nothing about your team other than I knew Will. I didn't know anything else. And I saw Nora open. I think, or no, she middled in that round, I think.
She was middling in that round, yeah.
Yeah. And I said to Will after, like, I don't know, who is that? She's very good. And now I know that Nora's like an accomplished competitor, just like you are. You weren't in that round, so I got to see Nora attorney. She's fantastic. She's really, really good. Is she doing law school next year?
Not immediately, no. She's taking a break, but she's doing law school in the future.
What are you doing next year?
So the fun story is that both of us actually this summer are going to California to coach for Envision, which is the high school mock trial camp. So we'll both be teaching mock trial over the summer, and then both of us will be taking a break for the next year.
Do you think you want to do law school?
I'm torn right now between law school and non-law school. Obviously, there's a lot of stuff about the law that I really love, that I feel very passionate about. My major is actually data science, so I come from a little bit of a different discipline, and I often think about marrying those two things in like expert witness consultation and stuff like that. So I wouldn't say I'm completely decided, but something in the realm, for sure.
Well, you've got some time to figure that out, luckily, but not a ton of time. So Godspeed on that. Well, we are really excited to have you. 3 straight years as an all-region attorney. You won an ORC Attorney Award this year. We are super, super pumped to have you. Really, really excited to see you virtually at the tournament in a couple of weeks.
Thank you so much.
I demand a trial by combat.
I'm joined by the next 2 competitors selected for Trial by Combat's play-in tournament for the 2023 year. Why don't you guys introduce yourselves?
Hi, I'm Lanai Davidson. I'm a junior at the University of Maryland, College Park.
Hi, my name is Josiah Jones. I'm a second year at Dickinson College.
So congratulations, guys. We're super excited to have both of you in the play-in, which is next weekend, which is kind of crazy to say out loud. I've got a lot of work to do over the next week. So Lanai, you spoke to Justin and Isaiah. I spoke to you last weekend. How did it feel when you got the call? Were you shocked?
I was shocked. I was just like, relaxing. I saw a call from California and I was like, oh, I don't know what this call, like, I almost just was like, oh, it's a spam call because I keep getting those. And I was like, wait a second, let me take this. And when I answered, I was like, I don't know how I must have sounded to Justin, but I was very shocked and happy.
Isaiah, you seemed pretty shocked when you answered the phone. You definitely did not know it was or suspected it was me, right?
Yeah, no, seriously. So how Dickinson's like in Pennsylvania, I was like, it's probably one of my friends trying to reach out to me or something. And then you introduced myself and I was like, oh. And I was just laying down in bed, like just relaxing for the day. And then all of a sudden I'm pacing back and forth in my dorm as like we're on the call.
So we're going to talk a little bit about combat in just a second. But before we do, we have NCT this weekend. And as 2 top-tier competitors, I want to hear what you think about the tournament. So we're going to do what we normally do last on our segments first, predictions. I want to hear who you think is going to be in the final round and who you think is going to win. And you know the rules. Can't equivocate. You must select 2 schools as the division winners and 1 as the national champion. And you may not select the same schools as your counterpart here. Whenever you're ready.
Isaiah, you want to go first? You might hear a dog barking in the background for me.
Oh God. Let me see. Am I allowed to get the division up? There's so many like new schools this year.
Absolutely.
Let's see. For the Marcus Pullman division, I'm gonna give some love to Chicago because Dickinson, we hit them at our 4th round at Nationals last year. So I'm gonna give some love to them, and obviously, like, we also hit them at their Great Chicago Fire Invitational. And then the Butch Porter and Johnson division, I'm probably gonna go with. I'm gonna give some love to NYU. We hit them both at regionals and orcs. So I'm gonna give some love to their NYUP team.
Chicago NYU, definitely a strong pick. Linnea, with NYU and Chicago off the board, who are going to be our division winners and who is going to win the national championship?
So I was going to choose Chicago as well. I'm gonna give, love to a team that we all love, which is Tufts. I think we hit them. I think Maryland and Tufts might have a special relationship because it seems that anytime we go to a tournament, if we can hit them, we will hit them. And so they're phenomenal competitors. So I'll give that to them. And then if I can't choose Chicago, I think I'll go for maybe Virginia. I'll go for UVA.
Solid picks. Another NCT question. Obviously, those are sort of the top tier teams that I think lots of people think have a good chance to win their divisions. Is there a team on those lists that you think is flying under the radar that could make a run to the national championship?
I think Hillsdale actually is often flies under the radar, but since my freshman year, I remember like at one of my first tournaments, I hit a Hillsdale team, and they were so good. I think everyone kind of underestimates them. I don't know, they could surprise people, I feel like.
Two bids to nationals. Obviously, they're doing something right this year. So that is
exactly.
A strong sleeper pick. Isaiah, your sleeper pick.
I'm gonna go to Juniata. Juniata is one of our like little co-Pennsylvania schools. But last year I believe was their first bid to Nats, and then they're doing it again this year. And they're a pretty junior program, but each year they're consistently getting to orcs and then to Nats. So I'm gonna give some love to them.
So we have Trial by Combat playing next weekend. Have you guys selected your second chairs and coaches?
I have. For me, my coach will be Abdullah Khan, who was the coach of our B team this year, and also I competed with him for 2 years when he was a competitor. So he'll be alongside me. And then for my second chair is my longtime co-counsel, Amber Wang. She's a senior graduating this year. If I happen to make it to the actual one in Philadelphia, I'll actually probably have to switch my second chair to my other co-counsel, Gabe Rosella. So might have 2 different second chairs.
Isaiah?
Sort of same thing with like different little rosters for play-in and hopefully tournament over the summer. But for the play-in, I'm going to have my little dream team defense council that I was able to have my freshman year last year. So my coach will be Jenna Pollock. She was our defense closer on our team last year. And then my second chair is going to be Daniel Klein. He's been my co-counsel for the past 2 years. But then over the summer, hopefully, we're hoping there, my coach is going to be Claire Simpson.
So what are you guys planning on doing over the next week or so to get ready?
Isaiah, do you want to start?
Yeah. So I already started deep diving into old Trial by Combat videos. As soon as I got off the phone with you, Phil, literally called up Daniel, and we started making like a whole game plan of what we can try to do to even prepare. Obviously, we only get that one day. And that's something like new for us, at least at Dickinson. We haven't really been able to do anything like that before. So probably just deep diving into old Trial by Combat videos to see what was working, what wasn't working.
Yeah, I've definitely started rewatching all of those videos, which I've already probably watched all of them before. And then during the competitive season, my coach was Liz Grant. So she's a 2-time Trial by Combat competitor. So basically going to have her try and help me out there. But otherwise, just like trying to put in some practice. I asked her, I was like, what should I do? The very first thing she told me to do was try to get better at memorizing things quickly. So maybe trying something like that.
You both said that you watched a lot of Trial by Combat footage, both to prep for this so far and just generally. Is there a combat round other than the finals that you think is particularly good?
I was always, I really loved, I guess this was it was during the Zoom years, but I guess the first one when it first went into Zoom, because Sydney Gaskins had her camera ships where she would have two different cameras angles and they would like magically change in the middle of the round. If I can figure that out before the play-in tournaments, you might see some different camera angles. I'll just have a bunch surrounding me the whole time.
So not the quality of the advocacy, the quality of the camera work.
Of the camera, yeah.
Got it. Isaiah, is there one that you like?
I was gonna say the exact same thing. Any Sydney Gaskins video, what's I literally from the start when I joined last year to the Dickinson mock trial program, literally the name I heard every time from them as we were trying to learn how exactly to get better at mock trial performances, whether that was online or in person, was just watch a Sydney Gaskins video. Last year I remember we would have like little watch mock parties, like where we would like watch old trial by combat videos before competitions, and it would literally be like a Sydney Gaskins video as we're trying to like take notes down and see what's like how she's doing stuff.
So not watch mock parties, watch space mock parties.
Yes.
That's
Hope you get
upsetting.
that trademark, Phil.
Yeah, you could.
You can copyright me later.
We'll talk offline. We are super excited to have you guys. We think you're going to be obviously excellent, formidable competitors in our play-in and potentially formidable competitors in Philadelphia in a couple of months. And we wish you lots of luck this weekend coming up.
Thank you.
Thank you.